convicted Boston Marathon bomber received a stimulus check of $1,400 back in March. Now, this shouldn't surprise anyone, though. Democrats cleared the path for this to happen after they brushed off an amendment to Biden's American Rescue Plan that would have blocked convicted inmates from getting stimulus checks in the first place. Here now, former White House Deputy Chief of Staff and Fox News contributor Karl Rove. So, Karl, I want you to weigh in on this because I know you study politics, you track these races, and it looks like 2022 is going to be a bloodbath. Looks like no matter who's going to be the president, whether it's Joe Biden or if Kamala has somehow become president, the Republicans are going to get some major gains. So what are they going to do with that power? Because there's a lot of folks in the audience, a lot of people within the Republican base that feel like the leaders are fighting for them.
Yeah. Well, I'd say two things. You got two issues here. First, let's take the issue of the Democrats and the stupidity of saying the Boston Marathon bomber ought to get a stimulus check. This problem emerged last year in 2020. Under President Trump, we passed relief to people, and come to find out, because of the way the bill was written, that we found out after the fact that people who were in prison got checks. And this became a big kerfluffle. And so when they got ready to pass a similar round of stimulus checks in 2021, we already knew that this had happened. And so the amendment was offered by the Republicans, and every single Democrat voted against it. And why? Because Dick Durbin stood up and said, well, we don't want to hurt the families of the people in prison. By denying them a check, we're going to deny their family a check, as if the people in prison were automatically going to give their money to their, whatever, their spouse, their kids, their whatever. So this was a stupid vote, and why the Democrats made their members vote for it. Now you're going to have Mark Kelly in Arizona and Warnock in Georgia having to go home and defend giving money to the Boston Marathon bomber as part of the COVID relief. They're in jail. What are they going to spend that money on? More commissary privileges? So anyway, why the Democrats do things like this is beyond me, but it is stupid. But the second issue is one where we better make certain, those of us who are conservatives and Republicans better make certain that their party and its candidates get their act together. Virginia shows us the way. Glenn Youngkin won not by simply saying, look how bad Biden is doing it. He had an agenda that said, here's what I'm going to do to improve the economy, to crack down on crime, and to make it and to elevate the education of our kids. So whether it's the economy, whether it's inflation, whether it's government spending, whether it's foreign affairs, whether it's immigration, Republican candidates better have a concrete idea of what they want to do and share that with the voters in their states and their districts. Otherwise, we're not going to win as many, Republicans will not win as many victories as they would otherwise receive.
Karl, it seems like the ground game is going to be essential. I was in Virginia 2 months before the election. Didn't look like it was going Youngkin's way. It really didn't. You were talking with people, they didn't know who he was, but he continued to go out there, talk with voters about the issues that matter to them. It wasn't just CRT. It was the fact that the parents wanted more control of the education. They were tired about their kids being in mass or being at home, and that mattered to them. But if you're not talking to the voters, you really can't make that case to them.
Yeah, absolutely. I happened to have a conversation with the candidate in, I believe it was early October. He'd been down on the Tidewater the night before for a big rally, and that morning he began at an historically black college in the Tidewater, and met with the president of the university, and then met with a bunch of students. What was the number one issue the students wanted to talk about? I'm getting an engineering degree. Why is it that I can't find a job here in Virginia? Why do I have to go interview for jobs outside of the state when I want to stay here? I want to start a small business, and I've looked into it. Why is it so difficult to start a small business in Virginia? And he had answers because he'd thought about three big issues and made his entire campaign about jobs, crime, and education.
Yeah, it could be so simple if Republicans just listen to their voters. Karl, thanks so much for your analysis.
You bet.